When seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton brings his beloved bulldog Roscoe to the Monaco Grand Prix, he expects a normal race weekend. What he doesn't expect is for his normally well-behaved companion to suddenly break free and cause chaos throughout the paddock. As embarrassment turns to concern, Lewis discovers that Roscoe's strange behavior might not be random mischief after all. When the bulldog's actions lead to a shocking discovery beneath the famous circuit, what begins as a viral social media moment transforms into something far more significant. Through unexpected alliances, heart-stopping racing, and a mystery that could threaten lives, Lewis and Roscoe find themselves at the center of a Monaco Grand Prix weekend that no one will ever forget. The morning sun sparkled off the blue Mediterranean Sea as Lewis Hamilton opened his eyes in his Monaco apartment. Today was qualifying day for the Monaco Grand Prix, the most famous race in Formula One. Lewis stretched and felt a warm, heavy weight pressing against his legs. "Good morning, Roscoe," Lewis said with a smile, reaching down to scratch his beloved bulldog behind the ears. Roscoe snorted and rolled over, his wrinkly face looking up at Lewis with those big, dark eyes that always melted the seven-time world champion's heart. Lewis had brought Roscoe to many races over the years, but something felt different today. The bulldog seemed extra alert, almost nervous. "What's up, buddy? You feeling the pressure too?" Lewis asked, swinging his legs out of bed. As Lewis got ready, Roscoe followed him everywhere, into the bathroom, the kitchen, even standing guard, while Lewis ate his breakfast of oatmeal and fresh fruit. This wasn't unusual. Roscoe was famous for being Lewis's shadow. But today, the dog kept making soft whining sounds and pawing at Lewis's legs. "You'll be with Angela today while I'm in the car," Lewis explained, kneeling down to look his dog in the eyes. "Best behavior, okay? Monaco is special." Special was right. The Monaco Grand Prix wasn't just any race. The track wound through the actual streets of Monte Carlo, with its famous hairpin turns and the tunnel that drivers blasted through at nearly 180 miles per hour. Winning at Monaco was like winning racing royalty, and Lewis had done it 3 times before. Lewis's phone buzzed. It was a text from his teammate, George Russell. "Ready for today? Weather looks perfect." Lewis texted back, "Born ready. Bringing Roscoe for good luck." An hour later, Lewis and Roscoe arrived at the circuit in Lewis's electric Mercedes. The paddock area, where all the teams set up their equipment, was already buzzing with activity. Mechanics in team uniforms rushed around. TV crews set up their cameras. Celebrities in designer sunglasses chatted with team bosses. "Lewis, over here," called Angela Cullen, Lewis's trusted personal trainer and assistant. With her bright blonde hair and friendly smile, she was easy to spot in the crowd. "How's our boy today?" "He's acting a bit strange," Lewis admitted, handing Roscoe's leash to Angela. "Extra clingy and whiny. Maybe he senses my nerves." Angela knelt down and checked Roscoe over. "He seems okay physically. Maybe he just knows this place is special." Lewis nodded, but something nagged at him. Roscoe was usually so calm at races now. The bulldog had been coming to Grand Prix for years and typically lounged around the Mercedes garage like he owned it, accepting pets from mechanics and sneaking treats from the catering staff. "I've got the team meeting in 5 minutes, then the track walk, then media," Lewis said, checking his watch. "Take good care of him." "Always do," Angela replied. "He'll be the most pampered pup in Monaco." As Lewis walked away toward the Mercedes garage, he glanced back. Roscoe was watching him go, those expressive eyes following his every move. The dog wasn't lying down comfortably as he usually did. Instead, he stood alert, ears perked forward, Strange, Lewis muttered to himself. The Mercedes garage was immaculate, with engineers hunched over computers and mechanics making final adjustments to the two silver and black race cars. Lewis's car, number 44, sat ready for action, its sleek body hiding the incredible 1,000-horsepower engine that would propel him around the track. "Morning, Lewis," said Toto Wolff, the team principal. "Ready to make some Monaco magic?" "Absolutely," Lewis answered, but his mind kept drifting back to Roscoe. Was he just being paranoid? Probably. Lewis had always been deeply connected to his dog. Some people thought it was silly how much he doted on Roscoe, featuring him on social media and even making him a vegan diet like Lewis followed himself. After the team meeting, Lewis stepped outside for the track walk, where drivers inspect the circuit on foot before racing on it. The sun was higher now, warming the narrow streets. Fans lined the fences, calling his name and holding up signs. "Lewis! Lewis! Can Roscoe sign my hat too?" a young girl called out. Lewis smiled and waved, but that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Something wasn't right with Roscoe today. And Lewis had learned over his long career to trust his instincts, both on the track and off. What he didn't know was that in just a few hours, his bulldog would cause a scene that would change everything. The morning passed quickly as Lewis focused on preparing for qualifying. He studied data from practice sessions, discussed strategy with his race engineer Peter Bono Bonington, and did a quick round of media interviews. The buzz around the paddock was about Max Verstappen's blazing fast practice time and whether anyone could challenge the Red Bull driver on the twisty Monaco streets. "Lewis, we're all set for the Sky Sports interview in 5 minutes, called out Bradley, one of the Mercedes media team. "Natalie Pinkham will be asking about your chances of a 4th Monaco win." Lewis nodded and took a quick drink of water. He was in full race mode now, his mind completely focused on the job ahead. Still, as he walked toward the Sky Sports broadcasting area, he glanced around for Angela and Roscoe. He spotted them near the Mercedes hospitality suite. Angela was chatting with Lewis's physiotherapist, while Roscoe lay on his special cushion, watching the paddock activity with unusual intensity. "There's Lewis Hamilton now," Natalie Pinkham said, as Lewis approached. The Sky Sports presenter smiled warmly. "Thanks for joining us, Lewis. Monaco must feel like a second home to you now." "It does," Lewis agreed, settling into position for the interview. "I've lived here for years, and there's nothing like racing through the streets where you actually live. It's a special feeling." As Natalie asked about his expectations for qualifying, something caught Lewis's eye. Roscoe had suddenly stood up and was staring intently at something near the Ferrari garage. Angela was momentarily distracted, laughing at something Lewis's physiotherapist had said. "The car feels strong," Lewis continued, trying to focus on the interview. "We've made some good improvements since—" A commotion interrupted him. Several people gasped and then laughed. Lewis turned to see Roscoe, his usually well-behaved bulldog, sprinting across the paddock, his leash trailing behind him. "Excuse me, Natalie," Lewis said quickly. "I need to—" "Is that your dog?" Natalie asked, looking amused as the camera operator swung around to capture the unexpected action. Roscoe was moving surprisingly fast for a bulldog, dodging between startled team personnel. Angela was running after him, calling his name, but Roscoe was on a mission. He darted past Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc, who jumped back in surprise, nearly dropping his water bottle. "Roscoe!" Lewis called out, but his dog didn't even look back. The bulldog charged forward, heading straight for the Red Bull team's area. Christian Horner, the Red Bull team principal, was standing with a cup of coffee, deep in conversation with an engineer. He didn't notice the approaching dog, until it was too late. Roscoe bumped into Horner's legs, causing the team boss to stumble. Coffee splashed across the pristine white floor of the paddock. Horner looked down in shock as Roscoe continued his charge, seemingly unaware of the chaos he was creating. "Sorry, Christian," Lewis called out, now jogging after his dog. He could hear people laughing and phones clicking as everyone captured the unexpected entertainment. Roscoe veered left, heading straight for the Mercedes hospitality suite, where team members and VIP guests were enjoying a pre-qualifying lunch. Staff members tried to block his path, but the determined bulldog weaved between their legs and leaped, with surprising agility for his stocky frame, right onto the buffet table. Platter of carefully arranged sandwiches went flying. Glasses tipped over. Guests jumped back, some shrieking, others laughing in disbelief. "Roscoe, no!" Lewis shouted, mortified but also confused. This wasn't like his dog at all. By now, nearly everyone in the paddock was watching the spectacle. Team bosses, drivers, mechanics, and media all stood with phones raised, recording the chaos. Even FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem had emerged from a meeting to see what all the commotion was about. Angela finally caught up, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Lewis. He just yanked the leash right out of my hand. I've never seen him do anything like this." Lewis's teammate, George Russell, appeared beside him, looking both concerned and amused. "Need some help catching your runaway pit crew member?" "Please." Lewis nodded gratefully. Together, they approached the buffet table where Roscoe now stood frozen, his wrinkly face covered in what looked like cream cheese, staring at the crowd of onlookers. "Easy, boy," Lewis said gently, holding out his hand. "What's gotten into you today?" Roscoe whined softly, then suddenly jumped down and darted away again, this time heading toward the paddock exit that led to the pit lane. "Oh, no," Lewis groaned. If Roscoe got onto the actual track, this minor embarrassment could turn into a serious safety issue. Outside the hospitality suite, the situation had already gone viral. Phones throughout the paddock pinged with notifications as social media exploded with clips of Roscoe's adventure. The official Formula One account had already posted a video with the caption, "Roscoe Hamilton, the fastest bulldog in Monaco." "Monaco GP, Sir Lewis," called out a stern voice. Lewis turned to see Niels Wittich, the FIA race director, looking decidedly unamused. "I need your dog contained immediately. We're scheduled to start qualifying in 40 minutes. "I understand," Lewis said, his championship focus now completely shattered. "We'll catch him." The paddock had become a scene of barely contained chaos. Mechanics who should have been preparing cars were now joining the search. Journalists who had been setting up for qualifying coverage were now reporting on the great Bulldog escape instead. Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz jogged up to Lewis. "I think I saw him heading toward Alfa Romeo's garage," he offered helpfully. "Thanks, Carlos," Lewis said gratefully, impressed by the show of sportsmanship even as his embarrassment grew. As Lewis, George, Angela, and now several helpers spread out to search, Lewis couldn't help but notice how the entire paddock had transformed. Bitter rivals were suddenly united in the search for one troublemaking bulldog. Team personnel who barely acknowledged each other were now coordinating their efforts, calling out sightings and potential hiding spots. "Check under the trucks." "Has anyone looked behind the tire stacks?" "I think I heard barking from the media center." And somewhere in all this confusion, Lewis's prize-winning bulldog was still on the loose, apparently determined to turn the Monaco Grand Prix upside down before qualifying had even begun. "We need to split up," Lewis said to George and Angela. "I'll check the pit lane. George, can you check the motorhomes area? Angela, Stay in the paddock in case he circles back." Lewis jogged toward the pit lane entrance, his heart racing faster than it did during the start of a race. This was Monaco, the crown jewel of Formula One. Teams had spent millions preparing for this weekend. Sponsors and celebrities had flown in from around the world, and his dog was threatening to derail it all. As Lewis reached the pit lane, he heard a commotion from the direction of the iconic Monaco swimming pool section. "He went that way," shouted a marshal, pointing toward the elaborate yacht harbor that bordered part of the track. Lewis sprinted in that direction, his eyes scanning everywhere for a sign of Roscoe. The situation was becoming more serious by the minute. If Roscoe made it onto the actual racetrack, qualifying would definitely be delayed. His phone buzzed with a text from Toto Wolff. "Is everything okay? Everyone is talking about Roscoe. You need help?" Lewis didn't have time to reply. In the distance, he spotted a crowd gathering near the first corner of the track, Saint-Devote. People were pointing and laughing. Some had their phones out, recording whatever was happening. "Please don't be Roscoe. Please don't be Roscoe," Lewis muttered as he ran. It was Roscoe. The bulldog had somehow found his way to one of the most photographed spots on the Formula One calendar. He was trotting along, occasionally stopping to sniff the track surface, completely oblivious to the growing audience watching his adventure. Track marshals were cautiously approaching, unsure how to handle the situation. "Roscoe!" Lewis called out, relieved to have finally spotted his dog, but horrified at where he'd chosen to explore. Roscoe looked up at the sound of Lewis's voice. For a moment, it seemed like he might run to his owner. Then, as if remembering his mysterious mission, he turned and darted up the hill toward Beau Rivage, the steep climb that followed the first corner. "You've got to be kidding me," Lewis groaned. By now, word of Roscoe's track invasion had spread throughout the circuit. The massive video screens that normally showed racing action were now tracking the bulldog's progress. Fans in the grandstands cheered each time Roscoe appeared on screen. Lewis's phone was blowing up with notifications. Even his father, Anthony, was messaging, "Son, your dog is trending #1 worldwide. What's going on?" Indeed, Big Roscoe on the loose was now the top trending hashtag on social media. Videos of the bulldog's paddock dash and track adventure were being shared millions of times. Even celebrities attending the race were posting about it. Best pre-race entertainment ever. "Go, Roscoe, go!" posted tennis legend Serena Williams. "Roscoe, Hamilton for driver of the day," wrote actor Tom Cruise. Lewis spotted FIA officials huddled in serious conversation. One of them was speaking urgently into a radio, likely discussing whether to send out the safety car to retrieve the four-legged intruder. Just then, Lewis's phone rang. It was Bono, his race engineer. "Lewis, where are you? Toto's going crazy, and the race director is threatening to fine the team if we don't get Roscoe under control in the next 5 minutes." "I'm trying," Lewis said, more stressed than he'd been during any championship-deciding race. "He's on the track near Beau Rivage. I can see him, but he won't come to me." "The helicopter camera has him on the feed now," Bono replied. "The whole world is watching this, Lewis." As if the situation couldn't get any more chaotic, Lewis heard the distant wail of a siren. The safety car, a sleek Mercedes AMG, was being deployed to help with the Roscoe situation. Bernd Maylander, the veteran safety car driver, pulled up beside Lewis. "Need a lift to catch your dog?" he asked with a grin, opening the passenger door. Lewis had never been in the safety car as a passenger. Under any other circumstances, he might have appreciated the irony. Right now, he just wanted to find Roscoe before something bad happened. They drove slowly up the hill, following Roscoe's path. The bulldog had now reached Casino Square, the glamorous section of track in front of Monte Carlo's famous casino. A crowd of elegantly dressed gamblers had come outside to watch the spectacle, champagne glasses in hand. "There he is," Lewis pointed. Roscoe was sitting calmly in the middle of the track, as if posing for the cameras that were now focused on him from every angle. The helicopter hovered overhead, providing aerial coverage of what had become the most unusual event in recent Formula One history. Lewis jumped out of the safety car and approached slowly. "Come here, boy," he called softly. "That's enough adventure for one day." Roscoe tilted his head, looking at Lewis with those soulful eyes. For a moment, Lewis thought his dog was finally ready to end this embarrassing episode. Then Roscoe barked once, turned, and bolted toward the next section of track, the tricky downhill run to Mirabeau. Lewis heard laughter from the helicopter camera operators above. The crowd cheered. The Monaco Grand Prix, the most prestigious race on the calendar, had been temporarily transformed into the Roscoe Show, and Lewis, usually so composed under pressure, could only shake his head and continue the chase, wondering what had gotten into his normally well-behaved companion. Whatever it was, Roscoe seemed determined to be caught only when he was good and ready. As Lewis rounded the corner toward Mirabeau, he spotted George Russell and several Mercedes team members coming from the opposite direction. "We've got people positioned at the hairpin," George called out. "If he goes that way, we'll try to corner him." The famous Monaco hairpin, the tightest corner in all of Formula One, was just ahead. If they could trap Roscoe there, this embarrassing episode might finally end. Over the circuit speakers, an announcement boomed, "Attention all personnel. Qualifying has been delayed due to a track invasion. Please stand by for further information." Lewis winced. He had never caused a delay to an official F1 session before. What would the FIA say? Would there be a fine? Or worse, would this affect his racing license somehow? His phone rang again. It was Toto Wolff. "Lewis, the FIA stewards want to speak with you immediately," Toto said, his voice tight with stress. "They're talking about a potential breach of Article 12.2.1.h of the International Sporting Code." "What's that?" Lewis asked, still jogging along the track. "Failure to follow the instructions of the relevant officials for the safe conduct of the event," Toto explained. "This is serious, Lewis. We need to resolve this now." "I'm trying," Lewis protested, watching as Roscoe disappeared around the hairpin bend ahead. The crowd at the hairpin cheered loudly. Lewis arrived moments later to find that Roscoe had somehow evaded the team members stationed there and was now trotting happily toward the tunnel section, perhaps the most dangerous part of the track. "No, no, no," Lewis muttered. The Monaco tunnel was narrow and dark. If Roscoe went in there, catching him would be even harder. Just then, Lewis's other phone, his personal one that only close friends and family had the number for, began ringing. It was an unknown number. Normally, he would ignore it, but something told him to answer. "Hello?" Lewis said, still slightly out of breath from running. "Lewis, it's Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the Trackside Medical Center." Lewis's heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, but there's something you should know. I was reviewing some data from Roscoe's last checkup at your request, and I noticed something concerning in his blood work." Lewis slowed to a walk, focusing intently on the call. "What do you mean?" "His cortisol levels are abnormally high, indicating he's sensing something that's causing him stress. This could explain his unusual behavior today." The doctor's words hit Lewis like a splash of cold water. This wasn't just Roscoe being naughty or rebellious. Something was genuinely bothering his dog, something serious enough to completely change his behavior. But what could it be? Lewis asked, watching as Roscoe paused at the tunnel entrance, sniffing the air anxiously. Dogs can sense things we can't. Changes in air pressure, subtle smells, even minute vibrations. I can't tell you exactly what's triggering him, but it's definitely something physical, not psychological. As Lewis pondered this new information, a commotion erupted near the pit lane entry. Roscoe had suddenly changed direction, darting away from the tunnel and heading straight for the garages where the F1 cars were kept between sessions. "I have to go," Lewis told Dr. Rodriguez. "Thank you for calling." The pit lane was the nerve center of any Formula One event, filled with millions of dollars worth of equipment, car parts, and technology. Team members were busy preparing for qualifying, adjusting wings, changing tires, and fine-tuning engines. Now all of that preparation was thrown into chaos as Roscoe charged down the pit lane, weaving between startled mechanics and engineers. "Stop that dog!" shouted Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur as Roscoe zipped past their garage. Lewis sprinted after him, thoroughly embarrassed, but now also genuinely concerned. What was Roscoe sensing? Was there some kind of danger at the track that only his heightened canine senses could detect? By now, race director Niels Wittich had arrived in person. "Hamilton, this is completely unacceptable," he said, his face stern. "We've had to delay qualifying, and you've created a safety issue." "I understand, and I'm sorry," Lewis replied, "but something's wrong. My dog isn't acting like himself. I think he might be reacting to something dangerous." Wittich's expression changed from anger to concern. "Dangerous? What do you mean?" Before Lewis could explain, a shout came from further down the pit lane. "He's in the McLaren garage!" Lewis and Wittich rushed toward the McLaren team's area. Sure enough, Roscoe was there, barking frantically at something under one of the tool cabinets. Lando Norris, McLaren's young British driver, was on his hands and knees, trying to coax Roscoe out. "What's he going on about, Lewis?" Lando asked. "He seems really upset about something." Lewis approached cautiously. "The veterinarian thinks he's sensing something wrong, something that's causing him stress." McLaren team principal Andrea Stella joined them, looking concerned. "Should we evacuate? Could it be a gas leak or something?" The word evacuate sent a ripple of anxiety through the crowded pit lane. Team members exchanged worried glances. The Monaco Grand Prix was held in the middle of a busy city. If there was some kind of danger, "Let's not panic," Wittich said firmly. "But I'll call in the circuit safety team to do a check." Lewis knelt beside Lando, trying to see what had done Roscoe so agitated. The bulldog was scratching at the floor near the base of the cabinet, whining and barking intermittently. "Can we move this?" Lewis asked, pointing to the heavy metal tool chest. Several McLaren mechanics quickly lifted it aside. Underneath was nothing unusual, just the smooth concrete floor of the garage. But Roscoe continued to paw at one specific spot. "There must be something we can't see," Lewis said, running his hand over the area. As his fingers moved across the concrete, he felt it. A tiny crack, barely visible to the human eye, running along the floor. Under normal circumstances, it would have been completely insignificant. But Roscoe was treating it like the most important discovery in the world. The safety team arrived with specialized equipment. A technician ran a handheld scanner over the area Roscoe had identified. "There's a void under here," the technician announced, looking concerned. "A pocket of empty space where there shouldn't be one." The implications were immediately clear to everyone present. Monaco's track was built on city streets, streets that ran above ancient drainage systems, some dating back centuries. If one of these old systems was failing beneath the pit lane, Wittich made a quick decision. "Clear the pit lane. Everyone out now. We need a full structural assessment before we can continue. As teams began a hasty evacuation, Lewis finally managed to get hold of Roscoe, clipping his leash back on. The bulldog seemed calmer now, as if satisfied that humans were finally paying attention to what he'd been trying to tell them all along. "Good boy," Lewis whispered, scratching behind Roscoe's ears. "You're a very good boy." What had started as an embarrassing mishap was quickly becoming something much more serious. And as Lewis led Roscoe away from the increasingly tense pit lane, he couldn't shake the feeling that his dog's bizarre behavior might have been more than just mischief. It might have been an attempt to save them all from danger. "Hamilton!" a voice called out. Lewis turned to see FIA safety delegate Tim Goss approaching with a group of engineers and safety inspectors. "We need to speak with you and your dog." Lewis nodded, tightening his grip on Roscoe's leash. The bulldog had calmed significantly now, panting heavily from his adventure, but no longer trying to escape. "We're bringing in structural engineers to assess the pit lane," Goss explained. "If there's truly a void under the surface, it could compromise the entire area. Your dog may have detected something our regular inspections missed." A small crowd had gathered nearby, team principals, drivers, and officials, all looking concerned. The Monaco Grand Prix was not just any race, it was a landmark event for the Principality. A major structural issue could have implications far beyond Formula One. "The weird thing is," Lewis said, "Roscoe was acting strange this morning, before we even arrived at the track. It's like he knew something was wrong." Goss looked thoughtful. "Animals have senses we don't fully understand, especially those close to their owners." A commotion at the paddock entrance drew everyone's attention. Prince Albert II of Monaco himself had arrived, looking concerned. With him were city officials and emergency services personnel. "We're taking this very seriously," the prince told race officials. "Monaco's infrastructure is old in places. If there's an issue, we need to address it immediately." As the officials conferred, Lewis found himself standing awkwardly to the side, still holding Roscoe. What had begun as an embarrassing dog chase had escalated into a potential city emergency. He wasn't sure whether to feel vindicated or even more mortified. "Quite the drama your dog has caused," came a Dutch-accented voice from behind him. Lewis turned to find Max Verstappen, his greatest rival on the track for the past several years. Their relationship had been notoriously tense, especially after their controversial championship battle. But today, Max's expression held no animosity, just curiosity. "I didn't expect my weekend to go this way," Lewis admitted. Max crouched down to Roscoe's level. "So you're the troublemaker, huh?" he said, scratching the bulldog behind his ears. Roscoe responded with a contented snort, leaning into Max's hand. "He's usually so well-behaved," Lewis said. "I've never seen him like this." "My mom's dog did something similar once," Max replied, still petting Roscoe. "Wouldn't stop barking at a wall in our house. Turned out there was a wasp nest inside. Dogs know things." It was probably the longest non-racing conversation they'd had in years. Despite their fierce competition, both men shared a love for animals. Max had spoken in interviews about his own pets and how they helped him unwind from the pressures of racing. "What do you think they'll do about qualifying?" Lewis asked, glancing toward the growing number of officials. Max shrugged. "Delay it until tomorrow, maybe. But I'm more concerned about what's under that pit lane. If there's a structural issue—" He didn't need to finish the thought. Both drivers knew the dangers of their sport all too well. Safety was paramount. A shout came from the pit lane area, where engineers were now using ground-penetrating radar to scan the surface. "We found something," one technician called out. waving the safety officials over. Lewis and Max exchanged glances, then walked together toward the commotion, Roscoe trotting between them. A crowd gathered around a monitor displaying the radar results. "There's definitely a cavity under the surface," the lead engineer explained, pointing to a dark area on the screen, about 2 meters down. "Looks like an old drainage channel that's collapsed in on itself. The concrete above is starting to fail." "Could it have given way during the race?" someone asked. The engineer nodded grimly. "With 20 F1 cars passing over it repeatedly at speed? Absolutely." A chill ran through the assembled group. If the pit lane had collapsed during the race, with cars traveling at over 80 kph and crew members standing on the surface, your dog may have prevented a serious accident, Tim Goss said to Lewis, his voice solemn. Max looked down at Roscoe with new respect. Not just a pretty face, after all. The media had gathered by this point, cameras and microphones at the ready. The story was evolving rapidly from Hamilton's dog disrupts Monaco GP to something far more significant. "We need to make a statement," said Stefano Domenicali, Formula One's CEO, who had just arrived on the scene. "And I think our four-legged hero should be part of it." Before Lewis could respond, the FIA president approached. "Hamilton, in light of these developments, any potential penalties for the track incursion are officially withdrawn. Your dog's actions may have averted a serious incident." Relief washed over Lewis. He knelt and hugged Roscoe, who seemed to be enjoying all the attention, his tongue lolling happily from his mouth. Photographers captured the moment. Lewis Hamilton embracing his bulldog, with Max Verstappen standing protectively nearby. It was an image of unity rarely seen between the two rivals. "You know this will be all over the internet in minutes," Max said with a grin. "Better than videos of Roscoe running through the paddock knocking things over," Lewis replied, matching his smile. As emergency crews began setting up equipment to address the structural issue, Lewis realized something important had shifted. What could have been a career low point, having his dog disrupt one of the most prestigious sporting events in the world, had transformed into something unexpected. And somehow, standing there with his rival by his side and his loyal dog at his feet, Lewis felt a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. Whatever happened next, Roscoe had done something extraordinary today. Within minutes, the Formula One social media accounts posted a photo of Lewis, Max, and Roscoe with the caption, "Rivals on track, united by a heroic bulldog. Our Roscoe saves Monaco." The hashtag immediately began trending worldwide, quickly replacing Chachmanj, Roscoe on the loose. The initial videos of Roscoe's chaotic run through the paddock were now being reposted with new captions highlighting his apparent intuition. "That dog knew something was wrong before any human did," tweeted racing legend Mario Andretti. "Give Roscoe the Monaco trophy already," posted footballer David Beckham, who was attending the race as a guest. As engineers continued their assessment of the pit lane, Formula One officials gathered to discuss what to do about the qualifying session. Lewis and Max were called into an emergency meeting with all the other drivers and team principals. "We've decided to postpone qualifying until tomorrow morning," announced Stefano Domenicali. "Safety engineers need time to properly reinforce the affected area, but the race will go ahead as scheduled." There were nods of agreement around the room. Safety always came first in modern Formula One. In the meantime, Domenicali continued, "We'd like to turn what could have been a negative story into a positive one. We're already getting calls from media outlets around the world about Roscoe." Lewis looked down at his phone. Sure enough, notifications were pouring in. Texts from friends, calls from his publicist, direct messages from celebrities. Everyone wanted to know about Roscoe. Global news organizations had picked up the story. CNN, BBC, Sky News, and others were running headlines like F1 champion's dog prevents potential Monaco disaster and heroic bulldog saves Monaco Grand Prix. Even people who had never watched a Formula One race in their lives were sharing the story. It was the perfect combination of elements: a beloved animal, a famous athlete, a prestigious sporting event, danger averted, and a heartwarming twist. "We'd like to arrange a press conference," said F1's media director, "with you and Roscoe, if possible." Lewis looked at Roscoe, who was now sleeping peacefully at his feet, exhausted from his adventure. "He's had quite a day already," Lewis said. "But we'll do it." As they left the meeting, Lewis's phone rang. It was actor Tom Cruise. "Lewis, I'm watching this whole thing unfold from my hotel. It's incredible. That dog of yours should be in movies." Lewis laughed. He'd probably just sleep through all his scenes. "Listen," Tom continued excitedly, "I'm producing a new film next year about a rescue dog. Would you and Roscoe want to make a cameo? We could donate the fee to animal charities." Before Lewis could respond, another call came in. This one from tennis champion Serena Williams. "Your dog is my daughter's new hero," Serena exclaimed. "Olympia wants a bulldog now. She's been watching the videos on repeat." Social media platforms were working overtime. TikTok users were creating remixes featuring Roscoe's run set to music. Instagram was flooded with fan art of the bulldog wearing a superhero cape. Twitter users were demanding Roscoe be given honorary Monegasque citizenship. Even Monaco's tourism board got involved, posting, "Visit Monaco, so beautiful even dogs can't resist exploring. Regarder Roscoe saves Monaco." What made the story particularly compelling was the human element. The image of fierce rivals Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen standing side by side, united by their concern for a dog and the safety of everyone at the track. It was a rare moment of visible camaraderie between drivers who usually fought wheel to wheel without giving an inch. Several F1 journalists noted that this might be a turning point in their relationship. "Hamilton and Verstappen find common ground through unlikely hero," read one headline. By late afternoon, as Lewis finally returned to his Monaco apartment with a thoroughly tired Roscoe, the full scale of the story's impact was becoming clear. Prix. Roscoe Saves Monaco had been mentioned over 15 million times. Videos of the incident had hundreds of millions of views. Even people who had never heard of Formula One were now talking about the sport. "You've gone viral, buddy," Lewis told Roscoe, as the bulldog flopped onto his bed. "More famous than your dad now." His phone pinged with a message from Angela. "Don't look at your email. It's exploding with interview requests. We've had calls from Good Morning America, The Ellen Show, and even National Geographic." Lewis smiled, scratching Roscoe behind the ears. The day had started with embarrassment and potential disaster, but had transformed into something unexpectedly beautiful. The entire racing community, along with millions of people worldwide, had been united by the actions of one intuitive bulldog. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Max. "Your dog should be driver of the day tomorrow." He showed better track awareness than most of the grid. Lewis laughed out loud. Who would have thought that his biggest rival would be joking with him like an old friend? And all because of Roscoe. "Get some rest," Lewis told his dog. "Tomorrow's going to be just as crazy." He had no idea just how right he was. Lewis woke at dawn the next morning to the sound of his phone ringing. It was Toto Wolff. "Lewis, have you seen the news?" The Mercedes team principal sounded unusually animated. "I just woke up," Lewis replied, glancing over at Roscoe, who was still fast asleep and snoring softly. The structural issue Roscoe found was much worse than initially thought, Toto explained. The engineers worked through the night. They discovered an entire network of unstable channels beneath the pit lane and part of the start-finish straight. If they had collapsed during the race, Toto didn't need to finish the sentence. Monaco's street circuit was dangerous enough, without the track literally falling apart beneath the cars. "They're saying Roscoe may have saved lives," Toto continued. "The prince has issued a formal statement thanking you and your dog for preventing what could have been a disaster for the city and the sport." Lewis sat on the edge of his bed, trying to process this information. His dog, his companion, who was often the subject of jokes from racing purists who thought pets had no place in the paddock, had potentially saved the Monaco Grand Prix, and maybe even lives. "There's more," Toto added. "The FIA wants Roscoe to be part of the pre-qualifying ceremony this morning, some kind of recognition for his service to motorsport." Lewis couldn't help but laugh. "You're telling me they want to give an award to my dog?" "These are unusual circumstances," Toto replied, a smile evident in his voice. "How often does a bulldog prevent a potential catastrophe at a Formula One event?" After the call ended, Lewis scrolled through the morning news. The story had grown overnight. Engineering experts were now being interviewed about how remarkable it was that a dog had detected the structural issue before sophisticated equipment had. Animal behaviorists were discussing the extraordinary sensory abilities of canines. Monaco. Officials were pledging a complete assessment of the circuit's foundations before next year's race. But more surprising than all of that was the shift in how people were talking about Lewis himself. For years, despite his record-tying 7 world championships, Lewis had faced criticism from some corners of the racing world. His activism, his fashion choices, his vegan lifestyle, all had been targets for critics who claimed he wasn't focused. Enough on racing, now those same critics were notably silent. Instead, the narrative centered on Lewis's close bond with his dog, his quick action during the crisis, and even the grace with which he'd handled the initial embarrassment of Roscoe's paddock dash. As Lewis dressed for the day, he received a tweet text from George Russell. "You and Roscoe ready for your big day? Save some glory for the rest of us." When they arrived at the circuit, Lewis was stunned by the reception. Fans held up hastily made signs with Roscoe's face and messages like, "Our Bulldog hero," and "Roscoe for president." Some were even wearing Bulldog masks or T-shirts. The paddock, which had been cleared yesterday because of the structural concerns, was now reopened after overnight reinforcement work. Team members applauded as Lewis walked through with Roscoe on his leash. The Bulldog seemed back to his normal, placid self, trotting along calmly as if nothing unusual had happened the day before. "Look who it is!" called a familiar voice. It was Lando Norris, hurrying over with his McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri. "The hero of Monaco." "I think you mean heroes, plural," Lewis corrected, looking down at Roscoe. "They're saying the void under the pit lane could have swallowed half the grid during a pit stop," Oscar said, his Australian accent thick with amazement. "Your dog has better instincts than most rookies." The pre-qualifying ceremony was like nothing Formula One had ever seen before. Prince Albert II himself presented a special medal that was attached to Roscoe's collar. The crowd cheered wildly, and even the most serious team principals were smiling at the unusual spectacle. But as qualifying approached, Lewis knew he needed to shift his focus. Yesterday's drama was behind him. Now he had to concentrate on racing, on putting his Mercedes in the best possible position for Sunday's Grand Prix. "Take good care of him," Lewis told Angela, as he handed over Roscoe's leash. And no adventures. Today, okay, buddy? Roscoe yawned in response, looking thoroughly uninterested in causing any more excitement. The delayed qualifying session finally began under perfect blue Monaco skies. Lewis climbed into his car, adjusting his helmet and gloves with practiced precision. He took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind of everything except the upcoming laps. But as he drove out of the garage for his first qualifying run, Lewis couldn't help but notice the massive new banner hanging from the grandstand. "Thanks, Roscoe!" with a cartoon bulldog giving a thumbs up. The distraction cost him. His first qualifying lap was tentative, placing him only 13th fastest. Not good enough for Monaco, where overtaking during the race was nearly impossible due to the narrow track. "Focus, Lewis," Bono's voice came through his radio. "Clear your mind. You know this track better than anyone." Lewis tried. On his second run, he improved to 10th place. Still not where he needed to be. In the final qualifying segment, with just 10 cars remaining, Lewis could see Max Verstappen setting blistering times. The Red Bull driver eventually secured pole position, with Charles Leclerc's Ferrari second and Lewis's teammate George Russell an impressive third. Lewis managed only 8th place. Not a disaster, but not where a 7-time world champion expected to be. When he returned to the Mercedes garage, Toto was waiting. "Tough session," the team principal said sympathetically. "I couldn't focus," Lewis admitted. "Too much going on." Understandable. "Yesterday was intense." Toto paused. "But remember, Monaco is unpredictable. Anything can happen in the race." The post-qualifying press conference was predictably dominated by questions about Roscoe and the structural issue he'd discovered. Even Max, who'd taken pole position, spent more time talking about Lewis's dog than his own performance. "I'm jealous," Max joked to the assembled journalists. "My cats have never saved a Grand Prix. They just knock things off shelves." Back in his apartment that evening, Lewis sat on his balcony overlooking the harbor, Roscoe at his feet. The yachts below were lit up for the night, their lights reflecting on the dark water. Monaco was magical after sunset, a fairy tale kingdom of wealth and glamour. But Lewis couldn't enjoy the view. Despite the positive publicity and the averted disaster, he was frustrated with his qualifying performance. 8th place meant a difficult race tomorrow. On a circuit where overtaking was nearly impossible, starting position was crucial. As he absently scratched behind Roscoe's ears, Lewis couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this strange weekend than met the eye. Roscoe had never behaved like that before, not once in all their years together. What had the dog sensed that humans had missed? Was it really just the structural issue beneath the track? Or was there something else going on? Something they hadn't discovered yet? Lewis woke early on race day, the question still lingering in his mind. Outside his window, Monaco was already buzzing with excitement. Race day here was unlike anywhere else on the calendar. Celebrities, royalty, and racing fans filled the tiny principality to capacity. Roscoe was unusually restless again, pacing around the apartment instead of enjoying his usual pre-breakfast snooze. Lewis watched him carefully, remembering how the dog's strange behavior had preceded yesterday's discovery. "What's wrong, buddy?" Lewis asked, kneeling beside his companion. "You trying to tell me something again?" Roscoe whined softly, pawing at Lewis's racing boots that sat by the door, ready for the day ahead. Lewis had planned to wear them for the traditional driver's parade before changing into his actual racing boots. "My boots?" Lewis picked one up, examining it curiously. "What about them?" Roscoe barked once, an unusual sound from the normally quiet dog. Lewis turned the boot over in his hands, looking more carefully. "I don't see anything," he began, but then stopped as a glint of metal caught his eye. Embedded in the sole of the boot, nearly invisible unless you were specifically looking for it, was a tiny metal shard. Lewis carefully extracted it with his fingernails. It was no bigger than a grain of rice, but it had a distinctive shape. Not random debris, but something manufactured. Lewis's mind raced. If he had worn these boots and then stepped into his car, this metal piece could have fallen out somewhere critical. Perhaps near the pedals, where it could have jammed his throttle or brake. "Roscoe," Lewis whispered, "did you know this was here?" The bulldog sat down, watching Lewis intently with those soulful eyes. Lewis immediately checked his other boot and found a similar metal fragment. Then he checked the racing boots he'd actually be wearing in the car. They were clean. He pulled out his phone and called Bono, his race engineer. "Bono, I need the team to check my car thoroughly. I think someone might have—" Lewis hesitated to say the word sabotage, but what other explanation could there be? "I've found something concerning. I'll explain when I get there. 45. Minutes later, Lewis was in the Mercedes garage, showing the metal fragments to a small group including Toto Wolff, Bono, and the team's head of security. "These were deliberately placed in the soles of your parade boots?" Toto asked, his expression grave. "It looks that way," Lewis replied. "And Roscoe found them. He was pawing at my boots this morning, just like he was acting strangely before finding the structural issue yesterday." The head of security examined the metal pieces under a magnifying glass. "These are manufactured to a specific shape. They're not random bits of debris. Could they have caused damage to the car?" Bono asked. "If they fell into certain areas, absolutely," the security chief confirmed, "especially near the pedal box or electronics." There was a heavy silence as everyone processed the implications. "We need to check the entire car," Toto decided. "Every component, every crevice, and we need to review security footage to see who had access to Lewis's gear." As the mechanics began a thorough examination of Lewis's Mercedes, Toto pulled him aside. "We should keep this quiet for now," the team principal advised. "No need to create panic in the paddock. Let's be certain before we make any accusations." Lewis nodded, though the thought that someone might have targeted him was deeply unsettling. He looked down at Roscoe, who was now sitting calmly by his side, apparently satisfied that his warning had been heeded. "I'm beginning to think bringing him wasn't just luck," Lewis said. "It might have been the best decision I've made all season." The car inspection revealed another disturbing discovery. Hidden within the complex electronics behind Lewis's steering wheel was another metal fragment, identical to those found in his boots. Had it shifted during the race, it could have caused a catastrophic systems failure at speeds approaching 200 mph. "This is deliberate," Toto concluded, his face tight with anger. "Someone with knowledge of the car placed these where they could do maximum damage." Security footage was being reviewed, but in the crowded paddock with hundreds of people moving around, identifying a culprit wouldn't be easy. With just 2 hours until the race, Lewis faced a difficult decision: whether to report this apparent sabotage attempt to the FIA and police, potentially throwing the Grand Prix into chaos, or to keep it quiet and race with the knowledge that someone in the paddock might wish him harm. "What would you do?" Lewis asked Toto. The team principal considered carefully. "Race," he said finally. "We've checked the car completely now. It's safe. We'll increase security around you and the garage. And after the checkered flag, we'll deal with this properly." Lewis agreed. Monaco was too important to the sport and the principality. Canceling or delaying would affect thousands of people, and whoever had done this would be expecting a public reaction. perhaps even hoping for one. As the drivers' parade began, Lewis wearing different boots, fans cheered wildly for the man and dog who had potentially saved the event. Roscoe, wearing his special medal from the Prince, received as much applause as any driver. "Your dog's more popular than all of us combined," joked Daniel Ricciardo as they waved to the crowds. Lewis smiled, but his mind was elsewhere. Who would want to sabotage? His car? A rival team? A disgruntled former employee? Someone with a personal grudge? And how had Roscoe known? The metal fragments had been hidden from human eyes, yet somehow his dog had sensed their presence and tried to warn him. As they completed the parade lap, Lewis crouched beside Roscoe, giving him an extra hug before handing him to Angela. "Keep him close during the race," Lewis instructed. "His instincts seem to be better than our security systems." Walking toward his car for the start, Lewis felt a renewed determination. Starting from 8th place no longer seemed so discouraging. Someone had tried to take him out of this race before it even began. The best response was to show them exactly why he was a 7-time world champion. Time to prove them wrong, he whispered to himself as he climbed into the cockpit, a new fire burning within him. The Monaco Grand Prix has always been special among Formula One races. The narrow streets leave almost no room for error. The iconic tunnel, the hairpin turn, the swimming pool section, each presents unique challenges. But today, Lewis faced something beyond the typical racing obstacles. Someone had tried to sabotage him, and only his dog's extraordinary instincts had prevented it. As Lewis settled into his car, adjusting his helmet and gloves, Bono's voice came through his radio. "Lewis, after the discoveries this morning, we've triple-checked everything. The car is clean. You're good to go." "Thanks, Bono," Lewis replied. "Let's make this one count." From his 8th place starting position, Lewis knew he faced an uphill battle. Monaco was notoriously difficult for overtaking. Many considered it nearly impossible. The conventional wisdom was that your qualifying position determined your finishing position, barring any crashes or mechanical failures. But Lewis Hamilton had built his career on defying conventional wisdom. As the cars formed up on the grid, Lewis caught sight of Roscoe watching from the Mercedes garage with Angela. The bulldog seemed peaceful now, no longer showing signs of distress. Whatever danger he had sensed had been found and removed. "Lights out and away we go at Monaco," called the commentator as 20 Formula One cars launched from the grid, engines screaming through the canyon of buildings. Lewis made a clean start, staying tight to the inside line at the first corner. Ahead, Max Verstappen led from pole position, with Charles Leclerc's Ferrari close behind. By lap 10, the race had settled into the typical Monaco procession, cars following each other closely but unable to pass. Lewis remained stuck in 8th place, watching the leaders pull away. "How are the tires, Lewis?" Bono asked over the radio. "They feel good," Lewis replied. "Better than yesterday." In truth, the car felt transformed, without the qualifying distractions. And with the knowledge that the sabotage attempt had been thwarted, Lewis was driving with renewed focus. Each corner, each straight, felt perfect, like the car was an extension of himself. "Understood," Bono said. "Keep this pace. We're looking at alternative strategies." On lap 25, opportunity arose. Fernando Alonso, running in 7th place, clipped the barrier at Portier, puncturing his right rear tire. As he limped back to the pits, Lewis moved up to 7th. "One down, 6 to go," Lewis muttered to himself. The race progressed with Lewis, gradually closing the gap to Pierre Gasly in 6th. But overtaking remained a distant dream. Then, on lap 40, the Monaco weather decided to add its own twist. Dark clouds that had been threatening all day finally opened, releasing a drizzle over parts of the circuit while leaving others dry, creating the most challenging conditions possible. Rain at the hairpin and Casino Square, Bono reported. Still, dry in the tunnel and at Rascasse. Lewis smiled inside his helmet. These mixed conditions were where he excelled. Years of experience had taught him exactly how to handle a car when grip levels changed from corner to corner. "Copy that," Lewis replied. "Let's stay out on these tires." As other drivers dived into the pits for intermediate rain tires, Lewis remained on track, carefully feeling out the conditions. His pace, initially cautious on the damp sections, began to increase as he found the limits of adhesion. "Lewis is flying!" the commentators exclaimed as he set the fastest lap of the race, despite the tricky conditions. One by one, those ahead struggled. Carlos Sainz slid wide at Tabak, allowing Lewis to slip through into 6th. Lando Norris, unsure on his new intermediate tires, left the door open at the hairpin, and Lewis was up to 5th. "You're the fastest car on track," Bono informed him. "Keep pushing." By lap 50, with 28 to go, Lewis had moved into 4th place, behind only Verstappen, Leclerc, and his teammate George Russell. The gap to George was 12 seconds, seemingly insurmountable at Monaco. But Lewis was in a zone now, driving with a precision and determination that had made him a legend of the sport. The rain had intensified in some sections, while others remained merely damp. It was the perfect storm for Lewis's unmatched feel for changing grip. "Lewis, at this pace, you can catch George," Bono said, the excitement evident in his normally calm voice. In the Mercedes garage, team members gathered around Roscoe, who seemed to be watching the monitors intently, as if he understood the importance of what was unfolding. "George, Lewis is coming," they heard George's engineer warning him. "He's 2 seconds a lap quicker." Toto Wolff made a quick decision. "Tell George not to hold Lewis up if he catches him. We need maximum points for the team today." With 15 laps remaining, the gap was down to 5 seconds. Lewis could see his teammate's car ahead, silver flashes between the buildings of Monaco. "You can do this," he told himself. "Prove them all wrong." The rain was falling harder now, creating treacherous conditions on the already challenging street circuit. Rivulets of water streamed across the track at certain points, while the tunnel section remained bone dry, a nightmare scenario for even the most skilled drivers. Lewis caught George with 12 laps to go, making a clean pass into the chicane. After the tunnel, his teammate didn't put up a fight, following team orders to prioritize the overall result. "Nice work, Lewis," came Bono's voice. "P3 now. Leclerc is 16 seconds ahead. 16 seconds with 11 laps remaining. At any other circuit, it would be possible. At Monaco, it seemed impossible. But the impossible had become Lewis Hamilton's specialty over his career." "Copy that," Lewis replied calmly. "How's his pace?" "He's struggling on the intermediates. The eager track is changing lap by lap." Lewis nodded inside his helmet. The decision to stay out on slick tires was paying off. While they offered less grip in the wet sections, they were perfect for the dry tunnel and start-finish straight. The drivers on intermediate tires were sliding around in those dry areas, cooking their rubber. "Gap is 14 seconds, Bono updated, a lap later. "You've taken 2 seconds in 1 lap, Lewis." In the Mercedes garage, engineers were frantically calculating and recalculating the mathematics of the chase. Could he catch Leclerc? And beyond that, could he catch Max, who was 5 seconds further ahead? Toto Wolff stood behind them, one hand resting on Roscoe's head. The bulldog hadn't moved from his spot, eyes seemingly fixed on the screens showing his owner's car dancing through the rain-slicked streets of Monaco. "He's going to do it," Toto murmured. "He's actually going to do it." With 8 laps remaining, the gap to Leclerc was down to 9 seconds. The Ferrari driver was visibly struggling, his red car twitching on exit from corners as the intermediate tires overheated on the drying sections. "Leclerc is coming in for slicks," Bono reported. "Max is staying out." The Ferrari dove into the pits, surrendering track position to Lewis, who moved up to second place. But the stop was quick, and Leclerc emerged just 7 seconds behind. With fresh, slick tires, he would be charging back. "Lewis, how are your tires?" Bono asked. "They're good," Lewis replied, though in truth his slicks were well worn after running the entire race. "I'm staying out." Now it was a 3-way battle. Max, leading on worn intermediates, Lewis second on worn slicks, and Leclerc third on fresh slicks. The final laps of the Monaco Grand Prix were shaping up to be the most dramatic in years. 5 laps to go, Lewis. Gap to Max is 4.2 seconds. Leclerc is 5.8 behind you. Lewis could feel Leclerc closing in his mirrors, the Ferrari finding grip with its new tires. But ahead, Max was struggling, his intermediate tires no match for the increasingly dry conditions. The crowds in the grandstands were on their feet. What had started as a typical Monaco procession had transformed into nail-biting drama. And at the center of it all was Lewis Hamilton, the driver who many had written off after his disappointing qualifying, the driver whose dog had saved the event, and perhaps now, the driver who would save the race itself from predictability. 4 laps to go, gap to Max 2.7 seconds. Leclerc 3.2 behind. Lewis was in the zone now, finding lines through corners that no one else had discovered, placing his car with millimeter precision between the barriers. This was Lewis Hamilton at his absolute best. The Rain Master, the man who had won his first world championship in the wet streets of Brazil as a young driver. 3 laps to go. Gap to Max 1.5 seconds. Leclerc right behind you, Lewis. Defend position. But Lewis wasn't thinking about defending. He was hunting the leader. "I'm going for the win," he told Bono, his voice steady and determined. As they began the antepenultimate lap, Lewis caught sight of Max's Red Bull ahead, its blue and red livery gleaming under the patchy sunlight, now breaking through the clouds. The track was developing a dry line, but damp patches remained, ready to catch out any driver who strayed from the racing line. 2 laps to go. You're in DRS range of Max, the drag reduction system, which allows a car to open its rear wing on straights to reduce drag and increase top speed, would normally be a powerful tool for overtaking. But at Monaco, with its shortage of long straights, its effect was minimal. Lewis would need to find another way past. As they approached the tunnel, the IE, fastest section of the track, Lewis spotted his opportunity. Max took a slightly defensive line, protecting the inside. But instead of following, Lewis swung wide, carrying more speed into the tunnel entrance. The 2 cars rocketed into the darkness side by side, engines screaming in the confined space, separated by inches. As they emerged into the daylight, Lewis had the inside line for the chicane. Max, knowing the championship implications, braked late, perhaps too late. His Red Bull slid slightly wide, leaving just enough space for Lewis to squeeze through. And Hamilton takes the lead of the Monaco Grand Prix, the commentators screamed in unison, barely audible over the roaring crowd. "Yes," came Toto's voice unexpectedly over the radio. The team principal rarely communicated directly during races, but this moment had overcome even his famous composure. "1 lap to go, Lewis," Bono said, his normally calm voice charged with emotion. Bring it home. The final lap of Monaco. One more tour of the legendary streets where Senna, Schumacher, and now Hamilton had created history. In the Mercedes garage, absolute silence fell as every team member held their breath. Angela knelt beside Roscoe, who sat perfectly still, as if he too understood the gravity of the moment. Lewis navigated each corner perfectly, knowing that Max and Charles were right behind, waiting for any mistake. But there would be no mistakes today, not from Lewis Hamilton. As he emerged from the final corner, Anthony Nogues, named for the founder of the Monaco Grand Prix, the checkered flag waved frantically. Lewis Hamilton wins the Monaco Grand Prix, the commentator announced as Lewis crossed the line just 0.7 seconds ahead of Max, with Charles a further 0.4 seconds behind. The Mercedes garage erupted. Engineers hugged each other. Toto threw his headphones in the air, and Roscoe, as if celebrating in his own way, let out a single triumphant bark that made everyone around him laugh through their tears of joy. Lewis completed his cool-down lap, waving to the cheering crowds as he passed each grandstand. The Prix fans, even those supporting other teams, recognized they had just witnessed something extraordinary. From 8th on the grid to victory at Monaco, overcoming both the track's notorious difficulty for overtaking and a potential sabotage attempt. Lewis, that was... I don't have words, Bono said over the radio, his voice cracking with emotion. We did it, Bono. The whole team. And Roscoe, too, Lewis replied, unable to keep the smile from his voice. As Lewis parked his car in the winner's position in Parc Fermé and climbed out, the gravity of what had just happened began to sink in. This wasn't just any win. This was Monaco, his 4th victory here, tying him with Alain Prost. And it had come after one of the strangest weekends of his career. Max Verstappen was the first to approach him, removing his helmet and extending his hand. Impressive drive, the Dutch driver said with genuine respect. I thought I had it covered, but that move in the tunnel, that was something special. Thanks, Max, Lewis replied, shaking his rival's hand firmly. The two champions embraced briefly, another moment to add to the growing collection of unexpected images from this weekend. Charles Leclerc joined them, the local hero disappointed. To miss out on a home victory once again, but gracious in defeat. The better driver won today, he said simply. The podium ceremony at Monaco is like no other in Formula One. Conducted in front of the royal box, with the prince himself presenting the trophies, it carries a sense of history and prestige unmatched elsewhere. As Lewis stood on the top step, the British anthem playing, he spotted Angela in the crowd below, with Roscoe sitting beside her. The bulldog wore his special medal from yesterday, catching the sunlight as he looked up at his owner. After the formal ceremony, Lewis shocked everyone by asking Prince Albert if Roscoe could join him on the podium. The prince, caught up in the extraordinary story of the weekend, readily agreed. Angela brought Roscoe up the stairs to join Lewis, Max, and Charles. The crowd roared their approval as the bulldog trotted onto the podium, his wrinkly face seeming to break into what could only be described as a smile. I think this is a first in Formula One, the commentator laughed, as Lewis lifted his dog to share the moment with him, a four-legged friend joining the celebrations. Cameras flashed as Lewis, still soaked in champagne, held Roscoe up to the adoring crowd. It was an image that would grace the cover of magazines and newspapers around the world the next day. The post-race press conference was dominated by questions about the weekend's unusual events. Lewis, talk us through what happened with Roscoe and how it affected your mindset today, asked the moderator. Lewis took a deep breath. He and Toto had agreed to keep the sabotage attempt quiet until they had more information, but he could talk about the structural issue Roscoe had found. "My dog has always been special to me, but this weekend he showed just how remarkable animals can be," Lewis began. "His instincts potentially saved this event by alerting us to the structural problem under the pit lane. And that gave me extra motivation today, knowing I was racing not just for myself but for him too." Max nodded beside him. "I might need to bring my cats to the next race," he joked, making everyone laugh. "Seriously, though, it's been an incredible story. From chaos in the paddock to a podium celebration with a bulldog, you couldn't make it up." As the formal media obligations concluded, Lewis found himself drawn into a private conversation with FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem. "We've reviewed security footage from the paddock," Ben Sulayem said quietly. "There are some concerning images that security would like you to look at. Can you come to the race director's office when you're done here?" Lewis's celebratory mood dampened slightly. The reminder of the apparent sabotage attempt brought back the unsettling knowledge that someone at the track might wish him harm. In the meantime, social media was exploding with the images of Roscoe on the podium. Monaco Bulldog and Roscoe, the hero, were trending worldwide. Videos of the victory and the celebration had already been viewed millions of times. Celebrity reactions poured in from all quarters. "If they don't make a movie about this weekend, they're missing out," tweeted Tom Cruise. "Roscoe Hamilton deserves a knighthood, too," posted tennis star Andy Murray. By the time Lewis made it back to the Mercedes hospitality suite, Roscoe had already been presented with special treats prepared by the team's chef. The bulldog was lounging on a cushion, accepting pats from team members, seemingly unfazed by his newfound superstardom. "He looks pretty comfortable with all the attention," George Russell remarked, joining Lewis with a congratulatory handshake. "Great drive today, by the way. That move on Max was insane." "Thanks, George. You were a team player today." As Lewis bent to scratch Roscoe's ears, he noticed something odd. Despite all the excitement, treats, and attention, Roscoe was still unusually alert, his eyes tracking something across the room that no one else seemed to notice. "What is it, buddy?" Lewis asked softly. Roscoe's attention was fixed on a catering staff member Lewis didn't recognize, someone moving quietly along the back wall of the hospitality area, watching them. Lewis's instincts, honed through years of high-pressure situations, were immediately on alert. The person didn't move like regular catering staff. There was something deliberate about their movements, something calculated. "Toto," Lewis said quietly, nodding subtly toward the figure. "Do you know that staff member?" Toto glanced over, his expression changing as he registered the same concerns Lewis had. "No, and I know all our regular team." Lewis reached for his phone to text security, but before he could, the figure suddenly moved toward an exit. Roscoe let out a short, sharp bark, the same distinctive sound he had made when discovering the metal fragments and the structural issue. Security. Personnel responded immediately to the bark, blocking the exit. The catering staff member froze, then tried to blend back into the crowd. "Stop that person," Toto commanded, his voice cutting through the celebration noise. Two security guards moved swiftly, surrounding the individual who now looked panicked. As they approached, the person made a desperate dash for another exit, but was quickly apprehended. "Lewis, stay here," Toto instructed, moving to join the security team. But Roscoe had other ideas. The bulldog pulled at his leash, dragging Lewis toward the commotion. By now, everyone in the hospitality area had noticed the security situation unfolding. "What's happening?" George asked, stepping close to Lewis. "I think we might have found our saboteur," Lewis replied grimly. The security team escorted the person, now revealed to be a man in his 30s wearing a catering uniform that didn't quite fit, to a private room. FIA officials and Monaco police were quickly summoned. An hour later, Lewis sat in the race director's office with Toto, the FIA president, and Monaco's chief of police. Roscoe lay at Lewis's feet, calm now that the suspect was in custody. His name is Victor Petrov, the police chief explained. He's a mechanic who was fired from another team last season. We found these in his bag. He placed an evidence bag on the table. Inside were several more metal fragments, identical to those found in Lewis's boots and car. He's confessed, the chief continued. Says he was hired by someone to plant these and cause a mechanical failure during the race. We're still investigating who was behind it. Lewis felt a chill run down his spine. The sabotage had been real and potentially deadly. At Monaco speeds, a sudden mechanical failure could have catastrophic consequences, and he would have succeeded if not for your dog, the FIA president added, looking at Roscoe with newfound respect. Somehow, he detected these metal pieces when our scanners and security checks did not. Dogs have an incredible sense of smell, Lewis said, scratching Roscoe behind the ears. He can probably detect the specific metal alloy, or perhaps some chemical used in their manufacture. Whatever it is, Toto said, he saved more than just the structural issue. He may have saved your life, Lewis. The realization hit Lewis with full force. His beloved companion, often dismissed by critics as just a social media prop or celebrity accessory, had potentially prevented a serious accident, or worse. The police chief stood to leave. We'll continue our investigation into who hired Petrov. In the meantime, we'll increase security for the rest of your stay in Monaco. After the officials left, Lewis and Toto sat in silence for a moment, processing the events of this extraordinary weekend. I think, Toto said finally, we should hold a press conference. The world deserves to know the full story, now that we've caught the culprit. Lewis nodded, looking down at Roscoe, who had fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's events. Yes. It's time everyone understood what really happened this weekend. The press conference that evening became one of the most watched in Formula One history. Lewis, with Roscoe by his side, revealed the sabotage attempt and how his dog had detected both this and the structural issue beneath the pit lane. What started as an embarrassing moment when my dog got loose in the paddock turned into something remarkable, Lewis explained to the assembled journalists. Roscoe wasn't just misbehaving. He was trying to alert us to dangers that human senses and technology missed. The revelation sent shockwaves through the sporting world and beyond. Roscoe, the hero, was joined by Shakhtar's canine superhero and Chartreuse Trust Your Dog as trending topics worldwide. As Lewis and Roscoe left the press conference, they were greeted by thunderous applause from team members, officials, fans, and even rival teams. The story had transcended sport, becoming a powerful reminder of the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. "Ready to go home, buddy?" Lewis asked as they climbed into their car. Roscoe looked up at him with those soulful eyes, then settled contentedly on the seat. His job was done. The danger was past, and his human was safe. Lewis Hamilton had won many races and championships throughout his illustrious career. But as they drove away from the circuit, the Monaco trophy sitting in the back seat, he knew that this victory, made possible by a bulldog with extraordinary instincts, would always hold a special place in his heart. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know which part of the world you're enjoying this story from. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like this one. Your support helps us create more content that brings joy and inspiration. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Spreading tales of kindness, loyalty, and the special bond between humans and their pets helps create more awareness about the amazing intuition our animal companions have. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back soon with another exciting story. Until next time.